Good morning, Boker Tov. Welcome to another week of Learning with Morah Debby on video. I hope everybody is healthy and surviving and being in their house with their families. So I'm in my house with my husband Warren, daughter Meredith, my son Teddy, and of course Brutus the dog. Now Brutus does not like that I work from home. He steals things from me. He takes papers off the table. He's such a silly dog. He's having a birthday, though. His birthday is on April 12th. He's going to have a Passover birthday this year. So while we're talking about Passover, which we were talking about last week, we're going to get on to our learning about Passover. So, every week we start our session with the question of the week. This week's question is, if you had to leave your house and could only take a few things, because you couldn't take them in your car and you couldn't put them on the horse, what would you take? So I would take all of my pictures. I would take my phone because there's pictures on my phone. But I would take all my pictures because, believe it or not, way before you were born, there were pictures that were not on phones. That's what I would take, my pictures and my memories.
If I had to leave my home forever, I would take my family with me because I love them very much.
If I had to leave my house, one thing I'd take with me is my puppy.
Shalom, Kita Aleph. I was leaving my house forever. I would bring with me a phone charger, chips, a gallon of water, and a siddur, and a Torah. Lefitra Kita Aleph.
Hi, Kita Aleph. I hope you're having a wonderful day. For the question of the day, the thing that I would take with me if I had to leave Egypt and could only bring one thing, I think I'd probably bring my cell phone because all of my pictures are on my cell phone and I can't imagine not having my pictures with me. And stay tuned for Yael's answer. Yael, if you could only bring one thing with you as you left Egypt, what would you bring? Who's in your hand? Who's in your hand, Yael? Who's that? Who's that in your lap? You would bring Ima? Oh, okay, but if Ima and Abba were going with you, who would you bring? Who's in your lap? Who is that? Is that Bibi? Show me who Bibi is. Show me Bibi. Yes, Bibi is Yael's big bird. Big bird would be who Yael would bring with her if she could only bring one thing with her.
What would I take with me if I could take only one thing out of my house? I mean, the boring answer is I would take my phone and a charger, but the point of the exercise probably isn't that. I would probably take my tefillin with me, like the little boxes that you wear in the morning with pieces of the Torah in them, and you should show respect to pieces of the Torah. If everyone was safe and all this other sort of thing, if I had to take an object, tefillin.
Hi guys, if I had to leave my home for good, of course my cats and my dog and my family are coming with me, so I would take with me my guitar so that wherever we went, wherever we were going, we'd always have a musical instrument to play along and sing to and sing songs to keep ourselves happy and be hopeful with. So I'd grab my guitar.
I would take my dog with me.
Hi, good morning, Kita Aleph. If I had to leave my home forever, I would bring a flashlight, a lighter, a Swiss Army knife, and maybe some pictures of my family, some food, probably some bread. I'd make some bread, and I'll try to bring a water bottle, fill it with water first. Maybe a
a Star of David necklace to remind me of my roots. And also definitely something for self-defense. Did you keep that?
I would bring a lot of books so I could keep myself entertained.
What I would take with me if I had to leave my house is all of my sports equipment. Give me something to do, give me something to play with, and just have fun.
So last week we started learning about the plagues. And we're going to talk about the plagues this week. So what is a plague? I'm going to read something to you. It says, a plague is something that causes trouble or distress to a group of people or a person. So a plague would be something that bothers you. Something, it could be a cold. Not really, a plague is not really a cold. But a plague is something that bothers a whole group of people. So last week I mentioned that God sent Moses, who was living in a faraway place other than Egypt. He was living in a village and far away. He sent Moses back to Egypt to tell Pharaoh to let his people go, to let the Jewish people go, because the Jewish people were slaves to Pharaoh. So what is a slave? A slave is somebody who is controlled by another person. So Pharaoh had all the Jewish people in what we call slavery. That means that the Jewish people had to do whatever Pharaoh said. And he was not nice, Pharaoh. He was not nice to the Jewish people at all. So when Moses walked back through the desert, he had his staff. We talked about his staff. That was his walking stick. And he met up with Pharaoh. And Pharaoh is the king or the president of Egypt at the time. And they called him a pharaoh. Moses told Pharaoh, please let the Jewish people go. Let my people go. They work very hard. They're tired. You got to let them go. And Moses said, let my people go, Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said, nope, not going to happen. So Moses took his staff and he touched the water. So he had told Pharaoh that if bad things were going to happen if you didn't let my people go. When Moses touched the water, all the water in the Nile River turned into blood. So that meant the fish that were in the river died, and the river started to smell very, very bad. And Pharaoh said, nope, still not letting your people go. I don't believe there's more bad things that are going to happen. So then Moses said, there are more things. The next thing that happened if you don't let my people go is the frogs will come. There are going to be frogs in your house, frogs in your bedroom, frogs in your bed. There's going to be frogs in your oven. There's going to be frogs in your mixing bowls. There are going to be frogs everywhere. They're going to be in your servant's house. They are going to be everywhere you go. So then Moses touched the water with his staff, and out of the water, which was now red, came the frogs. The next day, Moses came back to Pharaoh, and Moses said to Pharaoh, you need to let my people go. God said, let my people go. Let the Jews go. And Pharaoh said, still not happening. And then he said, I will make lice, which are little bugs that are itchy. So Aaron, Moses' brother, raised Moses' staff, and all the dust that was flying over the desert turned into lice. So all the little dust, you know, when you're playing in the sand and you throw it and there's a lot of dust, all of those little dust particles turned into lice, and they attached to the Egyptian people, and then they were all itchy. Well, Pharaoh still said, I'm not letting them go. So the next day, Moses came back and he says, did you think about it? And Pharaoh said, I thought about it. Not letting them go. So he said, I will send you swarms of flies over you and your servants. Moses raised his staff, and out of the houses of all the Egyptian people, the flies were swarming all over. There were flies everywhere. They were on their body, they were in their hair, they were everywhere. We probably would have needed a lot of fly swatters to get rid of all those flies. So then the next day, Pharaoh said, still no, not letting them go. He said, all of your livestock will get sick and die. So what's livestock? Livestock is cattle, it's horses, it's donkeys, the camels, the oxes, and the sheep. Now they needed all this to live, because maybe they needed the horses to plow the field and the oxes. They used horses as transportation. The cattle they probably used to eat the meat. The sheep, they needed the wool off the sheep's. So if everybody died, what would they do? So Pharaoh said no, and then all of the livestock started to die. Then the next day, Moses came back and Pharaoh still didn't listen. God told Moses to take all of the ashes out of the ovens and the fireplaces, throw them into the air, and when you blow, there was going to be boils all over everybody's body. So all of the ashes that you took out of your fireplace and the ovens and your fireplace grill attached to the people's bodies, and it made them break out into big scabs, and they were bleeding, and it hurt. Now, on day 7, Pharaoh then said no again to Moses in letting your people out. So Moses was told by God, outstretch your arms, and when Moses did this, the hail and fire fell from the sky. So all of a sudden, Moses went like this, and there was thunder in the skies, and big balls of ice flew from the sky. And when it hit the ground and hit the houses, everything exploded into fire. Now I think Pharaoh was getting a little bit nervous. But then on day 8, he came back, Moses, and said to Pharaoh, let my people go. And Moses said, and Pharaoh said, nope, still not letting them go. So Moses said, I am going to send locusts to the land. A locust is like a large grasshopper. So he said, the locusts are going to come to the land and eat everything left in the fields that the fire and hail did not destroy. So any trees that were left and any crops in the field, the locusts came down and ate it. So now they didn't have their cattle, they didn't have their sheep, they didn't have their horses, they didn't have their crops in the field, their houses were on fire, and Pharaoh was like, no, I still don't believe you that there's more bad things that can happen. So then, day 9 happened, and Pharaoh said, nope, I can't believe there's more bad things that are going to happen. How can more bad things happen? So then Moses raised his arms, and as soon as he raised his arms, the entire land became dark. Pitch dark. Not like it's light out today. It's like pitch dark outside in the middle of the night with no moon and no stars. You almost couldn't see in front of your face. And Pharaoh still did not believe him. So no land, no crops, no cattle. Their bodies are itchy. There's sores all over their body. The river is red. There's frogs jumping all over the place. And it's dark. And Pharaoh still doesn't believe him. Then Moses said, this is the bad one. This is really, really bad. He says, let my people go, or I will make sure that all of the firstborn children in each Egyptian house will die. And then when Pharaoh's son started to get sick, Pharaoh finally believed Moses. He finally said, okay, Moses, take your people and go. So they didn't know what to do. They were so excited. So they started packing up everything that they could carry. They had to leave their houses. They had to leave everything intact. They couldn't take their furniture. They had to take just what they could carry on their backs. And if they had their own oxes or horses, they were able to take that. So they started packing and carrying everything. They made backpacks, they made side packs, they were dragging things. Children were put on top of oxes, and the old people were put on top of the horses and the oxes so they didn't have to walk. And then they had to take their food. So they took whatever food was made, and they were in the middle of making their bread. They took it out of the oven the way it was, and that's how we got matzah. They didn't have enough time for the bread to rise. So they're walking and they're walking and they're walking through the desert, and they're tired and it's hot, and the people are almost not believing Moses at this point. And then they get to the river. They get to the Red Sea, and they don't know what to do because the Pharaoh's men are behind them. The Red Sea is in front of them, and Moses said, please believe me, come with me. They went, and now there's no place to go. So Moses raised his arms, raised his staff, and all of a sudden the Red Sea parted. And they were able to walk across the Red Sea on dry land to get away from Pharaoh's men. So this is where we're going to end this part of the story. We're going to talk, we finished talking about the plagues. Next week, we're going to talk all about the symbols of Passover. But now I want you to pause your video, and we're going to go get your pillowcases, because I'm going to show you what we're going to do with the pillowcases. So let's talk about our project. This is what we would have done in school. So next week, we're going to talk about how you use a pillow to relax during Passover. So we're going to make our pillows. We're going to make our pillowcases. So I had asked you to get a light-colored pillowcase. Hopefully everybody was able to find it, and markers. And what we're going to do is we are going to draw the plagues onto our pillowcases. But there's two things you need to do. You need to make sure you write your name. You need to be sure to write the date. You need to be sure to write Passover 2020. So I'm going to show you what my very talented daughter did and how she drew. You can do whatever you want. You can draw a scene. You can draw the plagues. It's just something for Passover. So this is what Meredith did. And mind you, I did not, the only light colored pillowcase I could find had purple and white checks on it. So we have the frog, because that was an easy one to draw. She drew flies and lice in people's hair. She drew the fire. She drew darkness. What else did she draw? Oh, the boils on people's arms. She drew the locusts, and she drew the cattle upside down because he was dead. So you do whatever you want, and please feel free to send me a picture. You can email it to me or find me on Facebook if you're on Facebook. Okay, so now, that's it for the pillowcase. You enjoy this. I hope everything comes out well. Last week, we sent you the vowels. I would like you to continue working on your vowels. Hopefully your parents will work with you. Please feel free to send me your vowel sentences or send me a video of you reading your vowel sentences. That would be super. So now I'm going to read you a book. It's a PJ Library book, and it's really a much nicer story of the story of Passover that I read last week. It's much quicker, it's much prettier pictures. The story of Passover. The story of Passover begins more than 3,000 years ago when Jacob and his family settled in Egypt. Jacob was called Israel, and his family were called the children of Israel. They were also called Hebrews because of the language they spoke. Many years passed, and Jacob and his children had all died. To the Pharaoh, the ruler of Egypt, the children of Israel were outsiders. He was afraid that one day they would rebel. To control them, he made them slaves. He forced them to do hard work. They were beaten. Some were killed. The wise men of Egypt told the Pharaoh that one day a Hebrew boy would be born who would lead his people against Egypt. They couldn't tell him which boy it would be, so the Pharaoh decreed that every newborn Hebrew boy must be thrown in the river and drowned. One boy was saved. At first, his mother hid him. Then, when he grew too big to hide, she placed him in a small basket. She put the basket in the river, and the baby's sister Miriam hid nearby to see what would happen. A princess, the Pharaoh's daughter, found the baby. She named him Moses and planned to raise him as her own child. Miriam ran to her. "Should I get you somebody to help you with your baby?" "Yes," the princess said. Miriam brought the baby's mother to work in the palace. Moses was adopted by the princess, but he knew he was one of the children of Israel. When he was a young man, he saw an Egyptian beat a slave. Moses attacked the Egyptian and killed him, and they ran away. Moses settled far from Egypt. He married and worked as a shepherd. And one day, while Moses was watching his sheep, he saw a burning bush. There were flames, but the bush wasn't harmed. "Moses, Moses," a voice called from the bush. "Yes, here I am." God spoke to Moses from the burning bush. He told Moses to lead the children of Israel out of Egypt. Moses and his older brother Aaron went to Pharaoh. They asked him to let the children of Israel go free. The Pharaoh refused. He forced the children of Israel to work even harder. Moses and Aaron warned him that if he didn't let the Hebrews go, the waters of Egypt would turn to blood. Pharaoh refused, and the waters turned to blood. The first plague to strike Egypt. That was the first plague to strike Egypt. There were 10. Frogs covered the land. A thick cloud of lice swarmed over Egypt. All the animals ran wild. The Egyptians' cattle became terribly sick and died. Painful boils broke out on the skin of the Egyptians. Huge hailstones mixed with fire fell on the land. A swarm of locusts attacked Egypt. It was as dark as night in the middle of the day. Then came the 10th plague. One by one, the firstborn Egyptian sons died. The angel of death only visited the homes of the Egyptians. He passed over the homes of the children of Israel. Pharaoh was frightened. He was a firstborn son. He called for Moses and Aaron. "Leave now," he told him. "Go quickly before we all die." The children of Israel left that very night. The next day, the Pharaoh had a change of heart, and he and his army chased after their former slaves. The Pharaoh's soldiers had horses, and their chariots were getting closer and closer to the children of Israel. The Red Sea was in front of them. The soldiers were behind them. They were trapped. God told Moses to lift his staff to spread his hands over the sea. Moses did, and the sea divided, and the children of Israel walked through the sea on dry land. Pharaoh's army followed them. And then when the soldiers were in the midst of the sea, Moses raised his staff again, and the waters flooded together, and the Egyptians drowned, and the children of Israel were free. On Passover, Jewish people all over the world celebrate freedom from slavery and the beginning of their great nation. The end.